Before I begin this review for Final Fantasy XVI, I would like to thank all of you who have subscribed to the channel and to the numerous positive and often informative comments that many of you have taken the time to post. Battling my way both figuratively and literally through my fourth playthrough of Final Fantasy's epic story-driven latest entry, it became very clear that I would be unable to create a review in the way that I have created others on this channel. Although it might have been possible to remain objectively focused on the game, I strongly felt that I needed to reflect my own opinions about the experience. I have created editorials before, but these were in addition to objectively based reviews. Here, though, for the first time, I merged the two to create an editorial review, a review that is both objective and subjective. Of course, that seems rather, well, contradictory, which is exactly how I feel about Final Fantasy XVI. After 4 decades of playing video games, I can neither think of nor remember another game that has caused such a juxtaposition, such a division, in my own opinion, towards it. If you had asked me halfway during my initial playthrough what I had thought of Final Fantasy XVI, I would have said, easily one of the greatest gaming experiences I've ever had. In fact, the sway this game had over me at the time was such that I even refused to watch SkillUp's excellent spoiler-free review of the game. At the time, I felt that he was solely attempting to do something different, faced with the inevitable barrage of positive reviews heading everyone's way. I apologised to SkillUp profusely for holding that opinion. I was very wrong. It was only after I had completed the game and when my own opinion had changed so much that I actually wanted to watch SkillUp's video. Of course, everything here is my opinion and observation, independent of others. Without a shadow of a doubt, Final Fantasy XVI is one of the most spectacular cinematic experiences you can have on any platform at the time I create this review. The quality of character models, animation, environments, effects, particle effects, lighting, shading and shadows, cutscene work, character voice animations, combat animations and set-piece action is industry-leading at the highest level. It is a spectacularly beautiful game. At times the game utilises contrasting scale in a way that we haven't seen since the original God of War 2 and God of War 3. Incredible, immense boss battles squaring off against legendary Final Fantasy creatures such as Garuda. These fights are absolutely engaging, for the most part calling for the player to overcome interesting boss mechanics. However, there is a reliance on oversimplified quick-time events that unfortunately falls short of those incorporated in, say, God of War 3. The spectacle of it all, though, cannot be denied. Outside this, though, the game suffers from problems with how it utilises the environments that have been created. Lead designers Mitsutoshi Gondai and Ryota Suzuki, with lead artists Hiroshi Minagawa and Kazuya Takahashi, have created some wonderful, intriguing and beautiful environments that reveal the diversity within the fictional world of Valisthea. Final Fantasy XVI is a story-driven experience. With Final Fantasy VII Remake, environments were used to serve the story, with the majority of them being linear, always driving the player forwards to experience more of the story. With Final Fantasy XVI, at times it does this, but at other times it suggests that there are much larger areas for players to take their time to explore, perhaps with lots of other things to discover that are not tied to the main story. Unfortunately, this reveals itself to be largely illusory. Final Fantasy XVI is completely story-driven. So much so, in fact, that it is to the detriment of pretty much all of the side quests unless they include the central characters themselves. The story is the dominant in the experience. Unfortunately, it is story over game rather than game over story. In my third and fourth playthroughs, I was literally scene skipping everything, including side quests, and it must have shortened my total playthrough time by at least 50%. Lead writer Kazutoyo Maihiro has delivered a wonderful, intricate story, there is no doubt, and I cannot fault the fine performances of the whole cast, notably Ben Starr as Clive Rosfield, Ralph Ineson as Sidolphus Telemann, Suzanne Fielding as Jill Warwick, and Nina Yildiz as Benedicta Harmon. What a great character name that is. But this is a case where the story and narration has been given way too much time, to the detriment of the actual game itself, especially considering how much the designers were talking about it being a live-action game in the spirit of Devil May Cry or even Nier Automata. This could be something you might say about a David Cage game such as Detroit Human. In fact, it is something I discussed in the review of that game on this channel. However, David Cage approaches the whole concept of a game experience in a completely different way, and so it isn't a suitable comparison for this reviewer. In terms of combat, again, initially I was extremely impressed. It is fun for a while. After acquiring more and more special abilities, I soon found myself just using a few techniques that I had acquired in the first half of the game and never felt an incentive to change them, even during my Game Plus playthrough, which was the second playthrough of the game. And only using the square button for non-magic attacks really gets boring and tedious very quickly. In fact, the Game Plus playthrough, despite having supposedly harder enemies to fight, seemed far easier in many respects than my first playthrough. I will point out that I did everything I could in the first playthrough and acquired the best equipment I could get. A prime example of this is that there is a dragon in the game that you can hunt. On my first playthrough, it took me 6 attempts to defeat it. I had to keep going away, leveling up, getting better gear, and then trying again. I only just managed to defeat it on the 6th attempt with the help of a resurrection potion. In the Game Plus mode, I killed the dragon on my first attempt. Considering Clive uses only swords, it would have been nice to see some of the special swords have some kind of effects on them. For example, fire, or swirling winds, or something. The swords are all recognisable names from past Final Fantasy games, but I really felt underwhelmed that having gone through all the trouble to craft the best sword I could, it visually didn't do anything. Masayoshi Soken once again delivers an absolute masterclass in composition. The soundtrack to Final Fantasy XVI is easily one of the greatest ever created for a Final Fantasy game, with so many memorable original ideas, from the spectacular and majestic to the dark and emotional through to the calm and serene. It is a musical tapestry full of wonder and enthusiasm. Utter brilliance. Unfortunately, what has really made it impossible for me to ever enjoy the game again is the ending of the story. I felt cheated and utterly let down. The story delightfully places a tender heterosexual romance at the centre of it, which I thought, wow, okay, that is actually quite brave, considering the ridiculous pressure that the comparatively minuscule woke horde has exerted on the heterosexual majority in pretty much every media you can name. The developers have stated that they wanted to evoke hope in the player and that the ending is supposed to deliver that, without acknowledging that they had already achieved that by including a romance facing almost insurmountable odds. The hope is that despite it all, that romance will prevail. Final Fantasy XVI is a spectacular, story-focused cinematic experience that is most definitely worth playing. Once.